Okay, time to look at our smoking gun. You've heard me explain about Galilee and Gentiles, and that this is the month of Adar on the left-hand side of the screen, based on the calendar, the month of the calendar, versus it being the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy. And now you see highlighted in blue two phrases, the first of which on the left-hand side is the text you've seen before, which I used to explain that it's the 6th month on the calendar, telling you that you can find the same construction for any calendar reference in the Old Testament, which also uses two definite articles. And you also heard me explain that this business about Christ being born on Hanukkah is in Haggai 2. There happen to be a lot more connections between Luke 1 and Haggai than I had said. But let's start at the beginning so that you can see our little smoking gun. You'll notice on the left-hand side, highlighted in blue, Tomene Toi. I'm not saying it right. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I haven't gone to sleep yet. Toi mene toi hectoi. Same phrase that's in Luke 1:26 is highlighted in Haggai 1:1. Now, I'm not saying the month number is not highlighted because it's the construction showing the calendar construction, all right, that's highlighted, just to show you that it's highlighted. Unless you think that, oh, well, that's a common construction. Yeah, it is. That's the point of what I'm trying to say. We know it's a calendar because that's the common double article construction. See, you got a definite article here. They call it article now. They leave out the word definite. But the word definite article is what they used to call it in the 1930s. And that's the double construction. Because in usual Greek, you want to have a fronting article in front of a noun. Okay? That's the way, the month, the 6th. Okay, this is the month, the 6th. And then Mia means the first of that month. That's in addition. So this is the 6th month on the calendar. 6th month on the calendar. This is in the 6th month of the 2nd year of Darius, which means that it's 6 months after Nisan, because the Persians measured their year starting in Nisan, same kind of year as the sacred year for Israel, at least in those days. The word of the Lord comes from Haggai to who? Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel, as we saw already in Matthew 1, is in the line of Joseph. What we haven't seen, because I won't be getting to it for a while, is that same guy is in the line of Mary right here. So you're going in reverse order. Remember, Luke plays things in reverse. So it was going down in Matthew line, it's going down from Abraham to Christ. Now it's going down from Christ back to Adam. Because again, Luke's theme is reversal. In other words, reversal in the sense of circle, coming full circle, completing time. Remember we saw door and Galilee of the Gentiles in Joshua 12:23. We're going to be seeing that again. And we're going to be seeing it again because Mary references it in her Magnificat, which we're going to be getting to. Because, preview of coming attractions, both what Mary says in her Magnificat and what Zecharias says are quotes from Haggai 2, specifically the part of Haggai 2 that is the promise to Zerubbabel that he will be the seed of Christ. both of them are quoting that same passage. See, back in Matthew, the people who are supposed to know this stuff, Matthew 2, remember? Remember I said, how come these guys aren't quoting Haggai 2? It's their job to know what time it is. Instead, they do the school kid thing. Everybody knows that David came from Bethlehem. Everybody knows that a son of David would be registering at Bethlehem. This is not anything surprising. But these guys were in charge of telling what you had to be pretty skilled to know, what time it is, because you had to read the sky every day. They didn't have watches. They had sundials. But to read the 365-day course of the year and to adjust your calendar for it and determine the new moon feasts and everything, because new moon means you can't see the moon. You had to be real good at telling time. And David designed the priestly courses in 1 Chronicles 24 to be based on a 24-hour day, 365 days a year, which means that priestly course wasn't operating properly all year long. Early in the year, Ziv, it would be operating pretty decently, unless they didn't calate. But hello, they're not doing their job. They don't know what time it is relative to what? Haggai 2. But guess what? Zecharias knows, and Mary knows what time it is. And that's what we're going to go through. And it's going to take, maybe 5, 6, 7 more videos just to focus on this, so you can see that while Matthew is, leaving out Haggai 2 because he's quoting them and what they know, and they're not paying attention to it, but he knows it because he's using Hanukkah language there. And Luke, we saw Luke play off that when Luke is starting the story about Mary right here. Okay? See? Luke is playing on it. And that's how I opened this video. Toi menai, toi hektoi. See? So is that all there is? Because if that's all there is, that's not enough evidence to prove the interpretation. Well, it's not all there is. There's quite a lot more. There's Mary's speech and there's Zechariah's speech. And as you're going to see, they're both playing, they're like actors playing the role of the two actors in Haggai that God references. There are two people that God keeps talking to in Haggai 1 and 2. And those two people are represented by their later descendants, Mary and Zecharias, as you're going to see. So, preview of coming attractions. We're going to be focusing on Haggai. So let's let's see. I'm not sure how to do this. Let's go down to I think what I'll do is I'm going to reset the computer and come back. I think we're going to just look at the outline of Haggai first. Okay, this is going to be our first pass. We're going to go through this several times because this is not something you can easily find covered. And I don't know of any scholars who recognize that this is what's going on. I wouldn't have known about it either, but just before my pastor got sick, God gave him Alzheimer's. Just before my pastor got sick, he announced to the congregation that he reversed his own position about Christ being born in the spring. That's what he had taught for years and years. And this was in the year 2000 when he reversed it. He reversed it to Christmas, just like the Roman Catholic Church said. And he encountered a lot of opposition from the church for doing that. And when I heard him, I thought, he explained why it was Hanukkah, all right? But because his mind was starting to go, he didn't document it very well. So I heard about that. I heard the 2000 classes. I think it was in 2004. And I just happened to be working on the timeline at that point, that God got me working on the timeline because I made a math error when I was looking at Daniel 9, and it got me into a certain train of thinking about the math of the Bible, the timeline. And that was when I heard these classes, and there was another person who had also been under my pastor who was writing me at the same time about Luke 1 and about Zecharias and his priesthood. So God kind of orchestrated all those events to come together at one point in time to get me to focus on this question of, was my pastor really, why did he reverse himself after 50 years of maintaining that Christ was born in the spring, which is the common theological position. Most Protestant theologians reject the idea that Christ was born on December 25th. And they're all wrong. Haggai is the reason why they're wrong. It has nothing to do with the Roman Catholic Church. It just so happens that somebody in the Roman Catholic Church recognized it was Hanukkah, and then they slapped the Saturnalia on top of it, because that was also true. And maybe, they stressed the Saturnalia to cover up the fact that it was a Jewish holiday on which Christ was born. And maybe they didn't try to cover it up. I don't know. I don't have enough access to Catholic records as to how they came up with it. So this is all speculation on my part about how the Catholics came up with it. But they did come up with it. And they are right to say it was December 25. Except the trouble is our December 25 today is not the 25th. Because Pope Gregory cut 10 days out of the calendar. So this is going to take some explaining. But the source of it, however the Catholics came up with it, the source of the Bible saying it's Hanukkah is right here in Haggai. So we got to go through this, because both Mary and Zecharias are going to be tagging Haggai. I should say Haggai. They're both going to be tagging it, and Luke has been tagging it, and so did Matthew. And we're going to see yet another set of keywords that read us into the picture that what Matthew and Luke are writing about is the Feast of the Dedication, Hanukkah. But we got to go back through it. Now, we've seen Book of Esther. We've seen how if it weren't for Esther, there wouldn't have been a second temple. Haggai is written a generation before that. This book, Haggai, is written in 521 BC. You might call it 522. I have to hone, most of my numbers are right within 6 months, but that 6-month swing is kind of important sometimes, and here's one place where it's important. So it's 521, 522 BC. Okay. And it's due to Haggai that the temple ends up getting rebuilt. What happened was they came back to the land in 537, and as soon as they come back and they've settled in and built their houses and are ready to start building, they do start building on the land. They do start sacrificing on the land of the temple, almost as soon as they get there. So the temple's, the function of the temple's in operation, but not the building. And then in the second year after they've come back, during the second year at the beginning of it, they rebuild the foundation alone of the temple. Okay, that's all told in the book of Ezra. They build the foundation, and so that's roughly 537, 536, again, swing of 6 months. They actually go back almost immediately after Daniel had prayed Daniel 9. But it takes them a while to get there, and assemble all the money and the bloodlines, and the whole thing had to be checked out. So by the second year that they're back, they're rebuilding the foundation. They finished the foundation this is real important, on the 24th of Kislev. Okay? Now bear in mind that the Jewish day begins at sundown. This is extremely important. The Jewish day begins at sundown of the previous solar day. So the 25th of Kislev, which is going to become Hanukkah, begins at sundown on the 24th. Okay? Bear that in mind. Now look. In the second year of Darius, again, this is 521, 522 BC, Have to fine-tune which of those two it is. On the first day of what? The 6th month. We just saw that. The 6th month. God sends Haggai to who? Zerubbabel, who is what? Instead of being king of Israel, which was his right, he's son of Shealtiel. We saw that in the bloodline already. He is instead governor of Judah. That was the office he was given by Darius. So Haggai is sent to who? The guy who should be king. Relative ancestor of both Joseph and Mary. This is a very significant clue to why we're going to know that Mary and Zecharias are referencing Haggai. Haggai is specifically sent not to all Israel, but to Zerubbabel with his official title. His official title, he's not king, but he's still an official. He's the highest guy in the region on behalf of Darius. And to who else? Yeshua, the son of Yehozadak. Zadok means righteous. God is righteous is the meaning of this. He is the high priest. Remember, you have to be a son of Aaron. And what is John the Baptist going to be? His mother is a daughter of Aaron. So what is that going to make John the Baptist when he's born? Now what I don't know is whether Zacharias was also a son of Aaron. It doesn't seem like it, because Luke would have mentioned him first as a son of Aaron and left out Elizabeth's line. But he doesn't. Haggai goes to two people, Zerubbabel and Yeshua. He's going to the guy who would be king, and he's going to the guy who's the high priest. Are you beginning to see the parallel cast of characters? In Luke, we got Mary, the daughter of Zerubbabel, and we got Zecharias, whose son is a son of Aaron by means of Elizabeth. You got that? The high priest's job is separate from the king's job, so that's why you had two calendars. Sacred for the priesthood, and civil calendar ran at the last 6 months, so that Elul, the 6th month, Elul would have been the 12th month of the civil calendar. But at the time this prophecy is given, the time is measured by Persian time. And in Persian time, the 6th month of the civil calendar is Elul, because it begins in Nisan. We saw that when we saw the book of Esther. The first month of the Persian calendar in Esther's day was named Nisan. Okay? We just saw that in the last episode. So we know that this is Elul. Is that ringing any bells? When Elizabeth gets pregnant, she's in her 6th month in Adar. That means she got pregnant in Elul. So what is God tying to? Haggai. Why would Luke mention it if it weren't important? What is Luke therefore incorporating by reference? Now Luke especially likes you to put the facts together. He doesn't like to stress the obvious. He doesn't want to bang it over your head. He's the guy with the 24 genitive absolutes in the book of Acts. He likes to finesse. All Bible writers do, and this is a characteristic of Greek literature, that they like to finesse. And it's actually a bigger characteristic of Hebrew literature. You're supposed to put it together and then smile. They don't want to tell you the punchline. They want you to figure it out. first day of the 6th month on the Persian calendar, so you have no doubt when it is. Who does God go to? Zerubbabel. And who else? It's not just Zerubbabel. It's Zerubbabel and the high priest, both. Now you begin to see why Luke paired up both Mary's song and Zecharias second. What's the order here? Zerubbabel first, high priest second. Same order that Luke uses in Luke 2. So what do you see at the end of Luke 1 rather? First day of the 6th month. Luke 1:26. 6th month mentioned a second time. For who? A daughter of Aaron is in her 6th month when Gabriel visits Mary. Both of them, 6th month. On the sacred calendar, which happened to coincide with the Persian calendar, that's Elul. But 6 months after that, on the civil calendar, which this guy had charge of in Israel, which is where the prophecy day, the Haggai, Haggai's in Israel. They're back in the land at this point, but they haven't rebuilt the temple. The 6th month on the civil calendar is Adar. So now let's take a look at the content, because this is Bible fingerprinting. You're seeing little clues. Okay, we got a fingerprint match here, double entendre. We got a fingerprint match here to Mary. All right. We got another fingerprint match to John the Baptist, if not to Zacharias directly. So we got 3 fingerprint matches, but you need 12 or 15 to know that you fingerprinted the right passage. Because what passage is being paralleled? All right. So now let's look at content. Thus says the Lord of hosts. See, Word of God. This is a way of saying, hi, what I'm going to tell you is the Word of God. It's a frequent refrain in the Old Testament. That's why you don't need a council of Nicaea to tell you what's Bible and what isn't. As people says, the time has not yet come, even that this is sarcasm, okay? Even the time of the house of the Lord to be built. This people says. In other words, they've been back in the land now. This is 521 or 522 BC. They've been there since 537 BC, since they laid the foundation. And 1 year plus that, 538. Well, 16 years have passed. So the people are in essence saying, well, it's not ready for the house to be rebuilt. Now, bear in mind, they've got a 70-year deadline. They have to rebuild it by 516 BC. That was the 70 years that God gave them as a deadline in Jeremiah 25, 29, and elsewhere. But the people are sitting on their hands. Then the Lord came by Haggai, saying, is it time for you yourselves to dwell? When it says panel, that means nice. Is it time for you guys to have your walls up and your roof on and you're all nice and cozy, but my house is desolate? More sarcasm. I figure you understand what that means. Now the Lord says, hey, stop and consider what? Your ways. Okay, there are 2 words in Hebrew used for your ways. Halak, which really means to walk, and derek, which means road. Remember that from Matthew 1, Matthew 3, Mark 1? They're all going to be playing on that. What's your way of walking? Walking is depicting your lifestyle. What's your lifestyle? You better consider what time it is. This is all about, hi, you're late. The time has not come. Time. Now, consider. You've sown a lot. In other words, you've been planting, working hard, putting the food in the ground so you can eat. But it's not coming up. Harvest. Pentecost is being played on here. You've sown a lot, but you're not getting, the ground isn't yielding produce the way you want. You eat, but there's not enough. In other words, this is Leviticus 26 playing out. When you disobey God, the sky will be hardened. Your crops aren't going to grow properly because you're not obeying me, so I'm not going to send you rain. Your grain's not going to yield. You're going to be hungry. You drink, but there's not enough to become drunk. In other words, there's so little vine growing. In other words, they're planting it, but it's not coming up. That's Leviticus 26, the negative warnings. You don't obey me, your agriculture's going to go to pot. You put on clothing, but no one is warm enough. In other words, the sheep and the cattle, there's not enough cattle and sheep to create the clothing that they need to keep warm. And warm enough is even more indicative because that part of the world is supposed to be relatively warm year-round. So they're having abnormally cold weather for abnormally long period. And he earns wages, but purse with holes means that either it's too expensive to live, because there's a shortage of food and clothing, or they're wasting their money, they're not spending it properly. We have that expression in English too. Purse with holes. Sooner earn it, then it just, you lose it. Repeat, consider. See, this is the bookend. This is what you're supposed to consider. In other words, you're paying attention to making your house. See, everybody's fitting in with everybody else. They're paying attention to themselves, but they're not paying attention to God. Because, and he's being sarcastic again, the people just are making God's house second class. They're after their own stuff. Yeah, and you go after your own stuff and your own moralities and your own fitting in with people. And no matter how hard you work, it's not enough. So, now he's explaining why it's not enough, why it's bad. Go to the mountains, get the wood, and rebuild my temple, so that I can be pleased and with it be glorified, says the Lord. Okay, now we want to look at that word glorified. Glorified. Eudokao. Eudokao isn't really exactly glorified. It's got more of a judgmental idea here, and we're going to have to kind of go through it. Dokeo is used an awful lot by Paul, and it means to have an opinion about. All right? The EU as a prefix means good. That's where you get good news. Okay? So this is a prefix, and then the verb it's prefix to is the object of the good. So this literally means good opinion. All right? So this is not necessarily saying glorified. I mean, it's implicit in there, but it's not primary meaning. It's not the primary meaning God is saying. He says, so I can be pleased. There you go. Ratzah. All right? And then glorified, that's kabod. But it's translated, and again, we have to use the LXX because that's what's being referenced, as we're going to see, in the Gospels. They're looking at the LXX when they say this. Okay, so when they're looking at the LXX, we're looking at eudokao, and it means to have a good opinion. See, we thought it good. That's AV means the King James translation of it. All right. Good, choose, determine, decide. In other words, God, it's like Genesis. God saw that it happened and it was good. In other words, God approves it, so that I may be pleased with it. Okay, pleased. Now let's pull this down so you can see your favorite translation. All right. That has to do with the wood. This is the building. This is the house, oikon, a great house. Same word is used in Matthew, where, that's where the Magi were led to. It's not a manger. and approve and approve. See, this is the word for be pleased, and this is the word, it's translated glorified, but it really has a connotation of an approval. In other words, you got glorifying that is done that is not approved, and glorifying that is done that is approved. It's really important. He's linking the two together, that I may approve it in order to be glorified by it. In other words, and this is a real important lesson we Christians don't learn, the Jews didn't learn it either, okay? God has his own way of wanting to be glorified. En doxaxo. In other words, we think maybe what we're doing glorifies God. But did God approve it? Or is this our hallucination? This is the problem with works. We come up with a work or something that we want to do, and it's really just filthy rags, just menstrual rags. Because really, it's a good work and it makes us feel good about ourselves, or it makes us feel good. But it isn't endoxaxthesomai. Alright? It's not doing the kind of glorifying that really glorifies God. He has to approve it first. The same word is used in Romans 12, a version of it. Okay? So is what I'm doing something God approves? That should be a constant question in our minds. And it gets to be kind of torturous, because there's often, 90% of the time, you're not really sure. There's always room for doubt. So you're always operating sort of in a fuzzball. When I make these videos, a lot of the times I don't really know that God was really in it until after it's over. Most of the time when I make videos, I think it's me, not him. And then I find out afterwards that it was really him, not me. A lot of the times. So you're going to have a lot of plaguing doubts while you do it. So the secret is to just keep using 1 down, 1 9 and keep testing it with the Bible. And you're always going to feel, not 100% sure. God will make good out of it anyway, but test it. Keep getting in the habit of testing. What is God's opinion of this thing that I think I want to do? Is it really going to glorify him or not? And obviously, anything that glorifies God, God had to do. My doing a thing doesn't make it glorify him. He has to baptize it with something. In other words, I'm making videos to you. I don't know if you're going to understand it. I don't know if it's something you ought to even watch. That's going to have to all be God's doing. So when my basic thought pattern, and I know I'm diverging, but this point is really going to be important for the text. When I make a video or do something that I'm writing allegedly for somebody else, is it teaching me something? As if nobody would ever look at it. Is it something God wants me to learn? And I just go through this exercise of making a video because it helps me be more honest and scholarly in looking at the text. That's really why I do the public stuff, is that I'm more careful than if I just did it privately. I'm more sloppy in my scholarship when I do it privately. That's one of my sin habits, is when I'm doing it on my own, I'm not as careful. But if I have to do it and you might look at it and you might see something wrong, then I get nervous and I do a better job. So that's why this video's here. And am I learning something from it? And every time I do. So then I know, okay, well, at least that purpose was met. And you know what? If you're getting something out of it, that's not brain out doing it. That's between God and you. It's totally separate from me. I have nothing to do with that. I'm doing this now for myself. Okay? So that's the point. When you're going to do something, and you think, well, this will glorify God, off the cuff. A lot of people just automatically assume if they do something charitable, that glorifies God. No. The Muslims are giving money all the time. Unbelievers give money all the time. Morality is exhibited by every class of human being. So is immorality. So don't assume that if it's moral, it's glorifying God. It's not. It has to be something he approves. See? And what is he telling them? They did moral stuff. Look. All right? Look. They built their own houses. It's not wrong. It's moral to do these things. Yeah, but God didn't honor it. Why didn't God honor the moral act of sowing? That's a lot of hard work. But God didn't honor it. Leviticus 26. It's not wrong to eat. It's not wrong to work for your food. It's not wrong to try to get food. But He didn't honor it. It's not wrong to drink water and all the stuff that's good for you. It's not wrong to drink wine. It's not wrong to wear clothing. Those are all moral activities. But God didn't honor them. It's not wrong to earn wages. That's moral. But it went right through their fingers. Because why? Because they're busy focusing on their own moralities and neglecting what? God's house. Now, a lot of Christians are going to misinterpret this, so I want to head this off at the pass. Don't say, well, okay, every time I serve in the church that I'm serving God. That's not true either. Lots of Muslims are serving in their own, their own holy places. They're not serving God. They're serving Satan. Okay? Lots of people and lots of religions have done a lot of work. Nobody's worked harder than the Hindus. Have you ever looked at a Hindu temple? That's the hardest kind of temple you can imagine. It's got 19,222 bazillion carvings on the outside. I can't even imagine how hard those people worked on it. And they're working for Satan. They're not working for God. So it is not automatically true, and we saw that with Zecharias too. The high priest, the chief priests, and the scribes are working really hard. The Pharisees and the Sadducees were working really hard at the made-up laws, the 613 commandments. They were very moral. They were serving Satan. They were called vipers. So service in church, in temple, in the mosque, is not necessarily doing God's work. John the Baptist was forbidden to do what he was oriented to do. Take up high priesthood. He had to go out to the wilderness instead. And like God says in Isaiah 1 and elsewhere, your service in the temple is a stench in my nostrils. So working in the church is no guarantee that it's spiritual. What do you have to know? You have to know this word. You have to test it. And I'm just guilty as anybody else. Okay? And you can say, well, how can you know? There's all these things that are supposed to be moral. How come it's not true that it's serving God? Well, because there are priorities. Do you put your own comfort in front of the comfort of the house? And that doesn't mean that you should throw away everything you own and no, you can't have your MP3 anymore and you can't have your iPod and you have to give all money to the church. No, that's not true either. The Pharisees and the Sadducees gave a lot of money to the church, to the synagogue. That's not it. It's a question of what's going on in your head. See, look, and this is another thing I better head off. Does it mean that you should just drop everything you're doing? You can't have any 5 minutes to yourself, and all you should ever do is study the Word of God. A lot of people think that too. No. Then how do you know? This is how you know. You learn the whole context. Now think about this. Do you spend all of your day eating? No. You eat in certain amounts at certain times, limited, every day. And sometimes you go without. And sometimes it's a good thing to go without. And you learn how much to eat, how much not to eat. And you don't learn it all at once, do you? So you take time to learn, and you don't get it right. You don't get your food right. You practice, you experiment. And what's good for you isn't good for the next guy. Some people, they should be spending like oodles of time studying the Word. Other people, they shouldn't do that. If they go overboard with doing that, it's going to mess with their motives. They're not going to have a balance in their day. Each one of us has to determine this before God by ourselves, and we're going to miss it. It's going to be an experimental thing. Okay? So yeah, there's some time when you should be serving in the church. There's some time when you should be, building for yourselves. See, he's not saying that you should never build for yourself. He's saying, what's the balance here? Well, how do you know? You ask God and you experiment. You use 1 John 1:9 and you keep on saying, okay, well, how do I apply this? What am I supposed to do? Okay? And one thing you better be doing is you better be spending at least some time every day learning God's house. Learning it. You have to learn this material before you know how to use it. If you're not learning the Word of God, if you're busy with rituals and works, and that's how you spend the majority of the time you consider spiritual, honey, you're not doing the will of God. See, that's what these people were doing. They were busy they weren't doing this in order to neglect this. They were doing this on the argument that, well, we got to make our people comfortable. That's a moral argument. Okay? They were sowing based on a moral argument. We got to do for our people. We got to do something. This is the pitch that's given for asking you for money. You got to do something. The whole focus is wrong. Is the action wrong? No, but much. How much? How much do you do that's moral versus how much do you not do? See, their problem is they were doing too much. More than the right amount. It was imbalanced. They were spending too much time on the people thing and the provision for the people thing, and they weren't spending enough time building God's house. Now, in our case, God's house, that's the temple. It's down. We're not physically building anything. This isn't a command to go build churches. But what about the house of your soul? And that's what's going to be the topic here. See, by building God's house in that day, they were setting it up so that people could go to the temple and get what? The Word of God. So relatively speaking, they were placing too much importance on the morality person, human to human, and not enough importance on the morality of setting up a place so that the learning could take place. Okay? This is not a command to build churches in general. This is a command to build the temple that they were returned in order to do. That was Daniel's prayer. So consider the balance. What's the balance between all of your works, all these things that are highlighted in blue are works, versus learning the Word of God? Consider your ways. How are you walking? Are you walking one-sided, doing all this stuff for people? And what about your house of thinking before God? That's the house you got to build. So, go up to the mountains. Now, when you go up to mountains, what are you doing? You're isolating yourself. Bring wood, word. Rebuild the temple of what? Your thinking. So that I may approve and be glorified. In other words, if you're doing all this, but the temple of your thinking isn't built, you're just like these people. You're busy building stuff on the outside, but you're not building anything on the inside. So, how can God be pleased with it? Hebrews 11:6. Those that diligently seek Him. You're not seeking God when you're doing this. You're seeking doing jobs for other people and slapping God's name on it. That's what they were doing here. They're moral. They came back in order to rebuild Jerusalem. They were commanded by God to do that. But they got their priorities wrong. They're doing too much of this and too much of this and not enough of building the house of their thinking. See, the temple was like the Bible in architecture. They didn't have all the scripture written, so it meant more than just the building. We got scripture in writing, so we don't have to worry about the building, except the rebuilding of the temple of our soul, where the Holy Spirit resides, so that God can be pleased with what we're thinking, that's Hebrews 11:6, and is glorified by what's in the house of our soul. What's on the outside is going to die. What's on the inside never dies. Every thought you think you're going to know forever. It's always going to be online. But what you do with your body, that's going to die. So, you look for much, but it comes to little. When you bring it home, what is it? I blow it away. Everything you're doing with your body for somebody else or yourself is going to get blown away. Why? Because my house, the house of his thinking inside your thinking, is desolate. And each one of you is running to your own house of your own thinking, your own busybodiness with your body. See? Your own paneled house. You're building a house of your own thinking, of your own ideas of what God wants, and you're slapping God's name on it. But he's not pleased. Therefore, because of you, the sky has withheld its dew, and the earth has withheld its produce. In other words, they had drought, and therefore no crops. This is why the United States has weather problems. Any nation that's got Christians in it that is having bad weather, this is why. We're not building the house of his thinking. The temple is inside us now. It's our fault. Leviticus 26. Okay? So I call for a drought on the land, on the mountains, on the grain, on the wine, the oil. This is the agricultural economy of that day. But you can transfer it to the metaphor for industrial economies. What the ground produces on men, cattle, and all the labor of your hands. In other words, bad economic conditions are due to bad Christians. It's our fault if the United States is in trouble. It is not Obama's fault. It's our fault. Hurricane Katrina happened due to our fault. That was the Bible Belt. The Bible Belt got hit. That's where the KJVO live. That's where the Pentecostals live. That's where the people who want to play with snakes and all that live. The most apostate section of the United States is in the South. Especially that part of the South. Okay. So Zerubbabel heard the message, and Joshua heard the message. See? Our cast of characters again. Zerubbabel, descendant is Mary. Yeshua, son of Jehozadak, descendant is going to be John the Baptist, exemplified by the father, who's actually in charge of committing John the Baptist to the lifestyle he's going to have. The high priest, and all the remnant leftovers, katalepo in Greek. The leftovers of the people. In other words, the people who are really going to grow are always going to be a very small percentage of the total. There are very few Christians, but they do exist, who really care about the Word of God, and they are rebuilding the temple of their thoughts. They're using 1 John 1:9. They're getting under a pastor. They're learning the Word of God. And yeah, it's hit and miss, and they're making all kinds of mistakes, and they have, spots of drought in their lives. But the trend of what they're doing is they're sticking with it. And so they're, like Zerubbabel and these group, they're building their temple of their thoughts of God. The Word of God is building in them. Obeyed the voice of the Lord as God sent him, and they showed reverence. Why? Because in this day, the command was, people got to be able to vote with their feet and find the teaching. If the temple is not up, then there's no place for people to go for teaching. That was the whole purpose of the temple. Okay, it was the centerpiece of teaching. because the temple itself depicted the future total Bible while the writing of the Bible was going on. My pastor spent a lot of time explaining that. There's like 50% of the Old Testament text is spent on the description and the temple. And the reason why is because you could look at it and metaphorically understand everything that you needed to know before Scripture was committed to writing. Because it took 1,500 years and 66 authors. Well, then the people who only had Genesis would have been penalized, right? No, there were ways of teaching them by metaphor. And then when David came, the promise was, well, this whole thing is going to be finished in a body of architecture. But 1 Kings 9, if the people are dishonest, if the people are disloyal to God, God's going to knock that house down. And that's where Jeremiah comes in. And that's why these people are back in the land. Because the 70 years is going to be up in 516. It's 522, and they still haven't rebuilt it. So what did God do? Leviticus 26, he punished them. And then they listened to that. And so what did he do? They repented and they started to rebuild. And we're going to pick up at the result of that, because that's where Mary and Zecharias are going to talk to in the next increment.